and I'm delighted to welcome the wonderful, the one and only Craig Mackinlay back to the show, former Conservative MP for Southend, and sadly, due to health reasons, not standing in this election. But good morning to you, Craig.
Julia, it's lovely to be back with you. It's been a long time, probably about 8 months or so, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've lost a few bits since
You
I saw
have
you
lost a few bits.
last time, but
For
I'm
those,
okay.
for those people who don't know the background, I mean, I'm sure most of our audience do, because I remember, when this news emerged, and okay, it was a surprise to me. I'd been in touch with you, and when you were first unwell, when I found out you were unwell, and you'd messaged back, and I was hoping good recovery and get you back on the show, because you'd been one of our favourite guests over the years. Right about everything, I think, is what an awful lot of our audience would think, Craig, when it comes to lockdowns and immigration and net zero and everything. And then we learned you emerged just before you came back into Parliament, just triumphantly, unfortunately, just before the general election was called, that you had, due to sepsis, lost extraordinarily your arms and your hands and your legs. I mean, it's just extraordinary.
It is. I mean, it's something I could never have believed, and It happened so quickly, literally overnight. The day before, I was feeling just a little bit sort of feverish, a bit fluey. Didn't think anything of it. During the night, got worse, sick and bad, and became very pale. My wife called the ambulance in the morning, and within a few hours being told, well, his chance of survival are about 5%. Get ready for the worst. So it was as quick as that. And then a month or so waiting for the limbs to die, really. They became black, almost like your sort of mobile phone plastic. It was a very, very weird to see it on your own hands, and obviously no feeling in them. Yeah. They looked like Pharaoh's arms had been dug out of the desert. They were that sort of dead looking, but they took them off and the feet on the 1st of December. And since then, it's been a long process of rehabilitation. I'm walking pretty well. I never worried about the legs and feet too much. That was never really much of an issue, because lots of our brave armed forces have lost similar under very brave circumstances, not like my just measly little sepsis, and are getting on very well in life. But to lose all four is a bit of a blow, shall I say. Yeah. And it makes you realise what you need your hands for, even using a mobile phone. And the big loss, of course, is not holding your little girl's hand on the way to school.
Yeah, because you've got to. It's not just you. You've got a wife. You've got a daughter.
I
have to say. I mean, again, met your wife at an event shortly before this all happened, and remember chatting to you with my husband as well for ages. And I have to say, I mean, I think our audience as well we are. I mean, horrified that this has happened to you, but also in awe of the spirit with which you have handled this, and the fighting spirit coming back. And when you appeared back in the House of Commons, there's a lot of sort of clapping, sort of virtue signaling the House of Commons, these sort of things. It didn't feel like that at all. That was genuine warmth on all sides of the House, and genuine, I mean, real, I mean, people genuinely impressed with your courage, because that is courage. A lot of people would have given up.
Well, do you know what's kept me going all the time? Bad news keeps me going, because you see international bad news.
Yeah.
And other people, the state they're in, you look at the Gaza Israeli war going on, and you think, do you know what? I might have this, but there's plenty worse in this world.
Things could be worse. Well, that's sort of spirit. Well, I think a lot of us.
When I was in my hospital bed, the worse the news, the better I felt, really, because I thought, well, okay, it's not so bad after all. Bad as it.
I think a lot of people are gutted you're not standing again, but you were hoping to stand if the election was later in the year. But again, this is not a party political point. This is just about the moral character of the MPs we'd like to have in the House of Commons. But you basically said you've got too much rehabilitation, too many operations ahead to get you back to sort of more fighting fit, and this election has come too soon. I mean, look. In terms of where we are in this election, in terms of where we are with the Conservatives and what they are offering right now, it seems to me
Julia, out of fun, some people have suggested I'll go to Clacton. It would be Mackinlay Farage the rematch, but even that's not tempting enough.
That would be lively. I'd love to see that. But it seems to me, when I think it looks things like lockdown that got us into the mess we're in, where people got a cost of living crisis that was talked about on the debate last night. Think about the net zero policies, even more of a long-term crisis for this country, not just energy price-wise, but energy-wise and security-wise. And you think about things like the immigration issue. I believe you've been on the right side of all of those issues. You've been speaking up for ordinary British people on those issues. Do you actually agree with any of the policies of the party that you've represented for the last few years?
No, I do. Of course I do. I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect political party. If there were, there'd be 60 million political parties in this country. But the Conservative Party, stands for the values that I have, and I think generally it's the values that this country wants. And most people are small c conservatives, shall I say. Of course, have we done everything perfectly? No. But a lot of the problems we face are a result of that ridiculous lockdown of £500 billion, £500 billion that was cost on all of those policies to keep us in our homes, scared to death and frightened for months and months on end. So little wonder that we have a problem on the other side of that, a problem of raising taxes to pay for it all. And there was an international crisis in terms of cost of living. You can't say, and I really, really annoys me when you hear, it was all Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng. What a load of nonsense. £5 billion worth of potential tax cuts out of a government spend of £1 trillion a year doesn't even take the skin off the custard. It was not the reason. The reason was the war in Ukraine and the aftermath of COVID. And the problem is...
Both of which, by the way, were supported by Labour.
It was. I mean, if it had been Labour's view, it would have been locked down earlier, for longer, far more expensive, and the permanency of the damage to the economy would have been that much worse. But they don't tell you that now, of course. They'd rather gloss over, because I think everybody realises that we did go a little bit too far for far too long. As I said on your show, on very many occasions.
I would say very, 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 very too far for far too long. What did you make of the debate last night in terms of who won, who lost? But I certainly thought both men performed better than I expected them to do, but I've got very low expectations, like I fear a lot of the public do have. But a Snap poll suggested that by a tiny whisker, by 51 to 49%, that people thought that Sunak had won over Starmer, despite being way behind it in the polls. Is that your estimation as well?
Obviously, I'm bound to be partisan on that. The Conservative Party is a party I support and will be supporting forevermore, and will be out campaigning during this election as much as I can. But no, there was clearly, to me, I think Rishi Sunak had the night. He was actually answering questions, and he was having to actually pose what on earth are Labour's policies, because I came out of that show none the wiser about what Labour actually stands for. What I do know is that they're going to pursue the most crackpot net zero energy policy that I think we've ever seen, that will cost us all a lot of money. They'll be wanting to raise VAT on independent school fees. I've never heard of any party in history wanting to tax education. I mean, it's just beyond mad. But then he has the ranks of the left behind him that he has to keep fed with red meat, or Labour red meat. So, I was quite surprised about how little there was out of Starmer, but I think Rishi did very well under the circumstances. Okay. But I would say that anyway. But I think
you would. I mean, we'll be talking to a Labour representative later, obviously, to get both sides. Just ask you finally, Craig, though, about Nigel Farage out in Clacton, that milkshake attack. People going, the milkshake, he was attacked with the milkshake. He didn't know what it was at the time. Second time this has happened to him. But also the reaction of some on the left who seem to all think it's all quite funny.
Well, no, that's such things as disgraceful. I mean, this is an assault. When that woman goes to court, she will be charged with assault, and I hope she gets an appropriate sentence. But I mean, do you know what? For Nigel's reputation, things like that don't do any harm. No. She's probably done him more good than harm in the polls in Clacton. But it's disgraceful behaviour, because let's be honest, if people can get that close to people we know, me, others, Prime Minister, Nigel Farage, whoever you fancy, it could be acid in there, and that would be very, very serious. So it needs to be treated with the seriousness that it deserves, because it could be that much worse. But yeah, it's bad behaviour. I can't say I wish Nigel well. I'm not surprised that he's standing in Clacton. It was the only seat that actually returned a UKIP MP, Douglas Carswell, at the time of the election. So it's a historic seat.
That would be the obvious one. Well,
so it's the obvious one to go to.
We shall see. Craig, I think it's a real shame that you're not going to be sitting in Parliament again, regardless of people's political affiliations. I just think you're one of the good people who speaks for ordinary people in this country.
Well, I can come on this show and speak the truth.
Oh,
Julia.
Don't think you're escaping us. We'll be inviting you back. You'll be going, oh God, Julia's on the phone again. Craig Mackinlay, absolutely all best wishes, love to your family, best wishes to you on your road to recovery, and you are welcome on the show anytime you want. Craig Mackinlay, thank you so much, Dee.